Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers, sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.
I don't have a co-host today, so I've got to do the introductions myself. Dan, thanks for leaving me alone today, but I'm quite excited because I've got Tash Hatherall in the studio today. Hello, Tash.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you, and Dan sends his apologies because we were really looking forward to this episode, so it's a bit of a bummer that he's not here. But yeah, so it'll just have to be me. I hope I make do.
I'm sure he's bored of my stories. So yeah.
I do. We'll see. Welcome to the show, and how are you?
I'm good. I think it's been the busiest Dubai summer ever.
It has.
Yeah. All these, I was planning on having a bit of a lie down after a crazy season, but it's literally been 20-hour days and everyone's looking forward to new season. I'm like, the old one's not finished. So
well, I'm exhausted already. I'm exhausted, and B, I can't believe we're already in August, nearly in September. Like,
I know.
Where the hell did this year go?
We're about to start pitching like Christmas stuff at work. So we're on the...
Are you serious?
Yeah, September is that when all the gift guides open. So yeah, we're on the Christmas countdown.
God, all the pictures and then straight into live projects. And there's this little thing called COP28 that's sort of in the periphery that's going to create chaos for everyone here anyway.
Exactly. And we've got loads of clients in that. So yeah, it's going to be busy.
Oh, wow. Well, speaking of clients and speaking of busy, what is it that you do, Tash?
So I own Tish Tash Communications. Mm-hmm. So we're one of the leading independent comms agencies in the region. It came from, we're 12 years old now. My plan was to go freelance and go to yoga after having a really busy corporate career, and I was quite tired. Be careful what you wish for. And then fast forward 12 years. And we've got 58 in the team, offices in Dubai, Riyadh and the UK.
Oh, wow.
And we're very busy.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back a little bit. So you had a corporate life.
Yes, I'd always worked in big agency, big, in-house, so the likes of McCann, Harris, L'Oreal, Diageo. And then I decided 14 years ago that I wanted to tick off my bucket list to come and work in the, overseas. I sent my CV to my university friend who was in Dubai and said, look, if anything comes up, let me know. And then within a month, I literally had to pack up and, rent out my house. And I was on the way here.
And Dubai was always on your radar, or was it?
No, I'd never been to Dubai.
Never been?
I literally got on a plane and I think it happened so quickly that I was so focused on it. I didn't have time to think, even the fact that I'd been. Look, at that time, 14 years ago, it was very different than it is today, but it still looked very glamorous. And so, yeah, it was only when I sat down on the plane taking off from the airport that I literally sat there and cried. And that the air hostess was looking at me. And I think that it hit me that actually I'm on a one-way ticket.
You're leaving. Yeah. And when you landed, what happened? How did you feel when you landed? How was your first couple of weeks?
It was very different.
Yeah.
I think even just, sort of 14 years ago, the level of admin for visas and getting set up here and everything was, and then throw in the fact, language difference and everything, and I was working for a local company. It was a culture shock, but I did have friends here, and I think one of the best pieces of advice I got from my friend was just say yes to everything. So I went through that. I went through a phase of being the yes woman. So, it was
back then, that's also quite dangerous because you'd say yes to things and there weren't systems in place yet, really.
Yeah, but it was literally random people were asking me, do you want to go to brunch in a lift? And I'd be like, yes. And so I ended up, going out with random strangers to for dinner or whatever, but it kind of, I'm still alive and I survived, and I always say that, I'm such a massive fan of the UAE, and
So what was the most random thing you said yes to then?
I can't even think now. I think going to a brunch with people I didn't know, anyone apart from the person I'd met in the lift, was quite random. And that was not something, I think, particularly coming out of your comfort zone in the UK, where you generally stay in your groups. That was quite, to me, that was quite radical.
I think it's very radical, but did it end up being a fun night?
Yeah, and I got a feeling I'm still friends with some of the people today. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you arrived. Did you all? I'm gonna jump around. So did you always want to be in comms? Did you always want to be in this world?
No, I was going to be. I was going to be a lawyer.
Okay.
And then I then I decided to do an A-level in law, and then it was so boring, and I actually even I'd gone down like the Oxford entrance exams, and I was determined to have this really big legal career. And then I just had a real panic and freaked out. I was like, no, this is not the career for me. I'm actually quite creative.
Yeah.
And I just realised that the kind of like, the legal career was not for me. So then I decided I quickly changed my mind and went to university to study psychology. And then
I'm sort of hearing my own life as you're talking. I'm like, I wanted to go and do law. I then got in there and said, yeah, no, this is not what I want. This is now not how I want to spend the rest of my life.
Quoting cases.
Exactly. And being surrounded by, only a small cross section of of society. Then I wanted to do psychology. Oh my God, this is crazy. Please continue.
So then I went down, I did a degree and a master's, and I thought I'm going to be a psychiatrist. And then I realised that I'd have to sleep in hospitals.
And I just snorted. Oh my God.
And that didn't really appeal to me either.
Yeah.
And I ended up going down the academic route, and I combined sort of psychology with marketing. And I did a PhD in consumer behaviour. So, and I was
that's very cool.
Working in addiction. So, and it was at the time where, this is how old I am as well, like where the internet was only just coming out, and I was looking at online addiction, like online shopaholicism. My friends to this day think it's hilarious, and they call me the doctor of shopping, but that's pretty much kind of where I was. And I was working for one of the most prominent research teams in addiction, and it was all on paper, it was amazing. And then I sat there one day, there's obviously a little bit of a pattern here, but I think it all gets you to where you need to be. And I sat there and I was kind of looking around at like my professors and people and thinking, I'm gonna be sat here in 20 years time in the same pair of jeans, in the same place. And like, I was scared. I was, I think that's not what I want with my life. And so I quit. Well, I finished and I quit and academia, and then I went off to join one of the grad schemes for one of the big global agencies. Started at the bottom, and then I kind of worked sort of my way up really through agencies, and tried a bit of agency life, a bit of in-house, did different roles within kind of the marketing and comms sphere. But then I've always loved writing, and for me as well, like I'm very kind of beauty, health and wellness is where I focus, and that's my passion.
Psychology would have really come in handy in marketing.
No, definitely. And that's why I kind of always say that actually, if you look, a lot of people who are in marketing do have a psychology background. So I always think, everything kind of helped me get where I am today, particularly as well, like, even all just all the research and all the kind of like, the fact, the writing as well, even in academia. But yeah, then I kind of worked my way up and somehow ended up where I am today. I never ever, planned to have my own business.
But like, so basically you woke up one day and said, yep, I'm done. Want to check off the travel list. Go. Was it one day that you woke up and it just hit you, or was it progressive?
I think so. I'd been in like my job in a company for like 6 years, and I love my company and I love my job, but I think I was living in like, I'd moved back out of London by then, I'd done that, and I was in suburbia. I had a nice house in the Cotswolds, and it was like, to a lot of people, like fast forward probably 10, 20 years, it would have been the dream. But I was like, what, I'm still like, I think I just turned 30, or a bit over, and I wasn't, I kind of just, I had really panicked.
Oh my God, we literally live parallel lives, because I did exactly the same thing. It was like I woke up and I'm like, in a year's time, if you ask where is Lily, they could tell you exactly where I'd be. And I'm like, I'm not ready for that yet.
No. But I go back now and everyone's still where I left them.
That too.
And I love them, but they're still where I left them.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It was for me, I think it was gradual in the background, but it was one day I sort of came to work and just went, no, I can't. And that's when I ended up in the UK and then here. But it was the same thing. So you packed bags, arrived, had a good cry on the flight, got off the plane, started saying yes, worked for a local company. Then what happened?
I think in that time I kind of obviously was understanding the industry here and learning it, and it was I was quite, I say the standard of comms and agencies like 14 years ago was very different to what it is today, and I was quite shocked. I think 'cause obviously I was in-house client, so I was managing agencies, and I was kind of frustrated, and I know I've always had very, very high standards, and I've kind of always, I don't know, I think for me the kind of companies and businesses that I've worked in, like your Havas and L'Oreal, it's like you've got to be remain top of your game or you're out the door. And I think to me, like sometimes seeing kind of some mediocrity it was tough for me. I mean, tough to get things done to the standard I wanted to. And so I was frustrated. And then, but kind of honestly, I think I was 2 years, I was quite burnt out. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to go and, take some time out. I'd save some money. I was going to take some time out, maybe do a bit of freelance, go to yoga and just see what I wanted to do. And that was in the December. And in January 2012, I opened Tish Tash. I just got
what led to that?
I mean, that was mainly so I could obviously have a trade license and a visa.
Okay.
So I could.
Oh, that's right. Because back then, freelance visas didn't exist.
No, so I had to open a company.
Yeah.
And so I just,
And costly then.
Oh no, it was super expensive.
Yeah, it was very good. If I
I'm
remember,
sure it's like 35,000 dirhams.
Yeah.
And then the visa on top of that, so it was a lot. But I kind of, was like, I'm very legal and very, so I like to be compliant. And so I kind of got myself set up. But really, I mean, it was not, the plan was, I was going to I had some consultancy for my own company, or old company. And then that was by the March, I had more business than I could handle. So one of my colleagues joined me and then fast forward the end of the first year, we won all of Johnson's Beauty. And then we had that for like 6 years. And then it just really kind of went from there, and then to sort of, where we are now.
Did you have a pinch me moment?
This is like something I think about a lot, and I sometimes feel quite sad because I feel like generally I am running around at such a fast pace. I don't stop and appreciate. And a lot of people always say this to me, like, I'm just crashing around and I don't reflect. But I am trying to be better at it. And I think, if you look back at the pinch me moments, it's things like, first, after 2 years, we got our first office. And I remember sitting there in an empty shell of an office, on the floor with no furniture and a key.
Where was your first office?
It was actually in the same building we still have an office today, on the edge of Media City, but it had the tiniest office you could get there.
Yeah, no, but Media City was bloody expensive as
well.
But
that's where I wanted to be, because I don't drive and it's close to home, and so, and I'm in media, so I wanted to be in Media City.
If that's not a pinch me moment, I don't know what is, Tash. Like, honestly, like to start an agency and within 2 years have your own office in one of the prime free zones in your sector. Congratulations. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, no, it is. And it definitely was one that, kind of like, I remember I sat there for ages, just like taking loads of pictures, sending it to my mum.
What'd your mum say?
No, I mean, my mum, she's kind of, she's, she is really proud and everything.
Yeah.
I think she worries I work too hard, but she's proud. But now we're still in the same, we've changed up 4 times in the same office building.
Because you're growing.
It's the same landlord, so they're really great. They let us move up, and now we have the whole side of the building. So...
Wow.
So yeah, it is.
How many staff did you say? How big's your team?
58.
58 in a comms team.
Yeah.
That's big.
It is, yeah. I mean, we've integrated other things in now. So we have design, content, social, digital, and we have our own studios, podcast rooms. So we try to integrate to do everything in-house now, but it's a lot.
So what's a normal day for you?
I mean, well, I am a 5 a.m. club person. I'm a morning person.
So 5 a.m. and hit the ground?
Yeah, generally, I kind of will, I like to get all my own kind of work done, really organised in a good way, make sure my inbox is empty, because usually once the day starts, I'm either in meetings or with other people. So yeah, I probably get into the office for like 7:30, 8 at the very latest, and then pretty much solid meetings back to back or events. It's kind of, I'm generally, there is no one day the same. It's a bit kind of all over the place.
But in the morning when you wake up, do you have a bit of a ritual? I mean, like to keep that energy, because that's...
I mean, I wish I could say that I'm one of these people that sits and meditates and does all this. I have other ways, but no, I'm not that person. Generally, I'm happy. I just want a good cup of tea. Very British.
Listen, that's meditative in itself. That's it, but it's also good to hear, because like everyone, there's always that pressure that if you're going to be successful, you've got to get up at 5 a.m. You've got to do 15 minutes of meditation, then you've got to do 15 minutes of journaling, you've got to do 15 minutes of and this is a formula that all successful people. It's like, well, is it?
Exactly. I mean, obviously, I've read the 5 a.m. Club book and everything, but my view is like, you can make 5 a.m. Club your way. It doesn't have to be the way that it was prescribed in the book. But that's it. I'm like, I go to bed at like 9. I'm kind of, that's the kind of thing people will say to me all the time, oh, it doesn't work for the 5 a.m. club. But then it's like, well, what time are you going to sleep? And it's like, well, midnight. It's like, well, it doesn't work that way. You have to orientate it all kind of the other way. So
yeah, me and my partner have opposite schedules. I'm also an early riser, because like having worked government, we start at 7:30.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. And, you know, it took an adjustment, but now I'm awake at like 5:45, still not a 5 a.m.er, but like 5:45, I'm up and it's done. But I'm ready for bed at 9.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to go to bed at 9. And my partner's like, well, yeah, but no. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't have to wake up that early. I go for me to be able to do that and be functional and be useful, got to go to bed.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thankfully, my husband's on the same schedule as me, so it helps.
Oh, lucky you. Lucky you. Tish Tash is predominantly amazing women.
All women.
Not one male.
No.
Tell me about that.
So, contrary to belief, I'm not a man hater. Some people have.
Oh, really?
You know, some people have said that to me.
Really?
Yeah, they assume it's come from that place. And it actually wasn't my plan. It really happened accidentally. But then now we've just decided to own it.
Yeah.
So I think the nature of what, you know, beauty, health and wellness, a lot of our clients are very female focused. You know, be it from lipstick to sanitary products, you know, kids products. So by nature, the people that want to work on those brands, I mean, the truth is, like, most men don't want to come and PR a lipstick or an anti-aging moisturizer. So we were very female focused. And then, you know, as we went along, you know, when you start to especially realize, like, some of, you know, I am very passionate about women and careers. And then when you start to realize that, particularly here, and it is getting a little bit better, but still not as it should be, you know, there isn't, you know, in terms of helping women with kids, it's like, you know, flexible working, you're truly flexible. Didn't really exist.
It wasn't there in 2012, that's for sure.
No, and it's still even now today, you know, it's like, well, that's why we're really choosing to focus and lead the way. And so my MD, she came on board 8 years ago, and she's got, you know, she's got 2 young kids. And so, you know, we kind of ended up like, what happens if we design a workplace that's made for women's needs? You know, what happens, and what, you know, how can we help women really flourish? So we've ended up that we, you know, we went into a very extreme way, but everything is set up to, you know, what do we need? So from people having individual working hours that are based on their work-life needs. So, you know, we have some of our team that maybe come in, they do the school drop, they go and do the school pickup, and then maybe they'll come back. Some who just work the morning. So the idea is that we have to treat everyone as individuals, and we give them their kind of, you know, that works for them. And even just part-time, we created a special role within each of our teams for like a team kind of coordinator, which is purely mornings. Because one of the things that we heard all the time is that a lot of women that want to be present for their children just want to work the mornings, and there was nothing part-time. And we have like the most phenomenal women that are in those roles. Like some of them are like chief of police for like, you know, in kind of like some of the kind of, you know, in the UK, but they just want to be out there. They want to be, you know, still having something for them, but then they want to be able to go and do school pickup and then, you know, be present for their children.
That's amazing.
So, yeah.
That's amazing. At one point, you said you guys decided to own it. Was that when your MD came on board 8 years ago?
I think that
it was. Tell me, and oh, sorry, there's so many questions. So, actually, I'm going to step back first. Who called you? What people were calling you a man hater?
I mean, a journalist did.
Are you serious?
I mean, he kind of offers, he was like, you know, he said, I'm actually really glad I've met you, because I did have a perception that you were like a man, you know, you just hated men.
Simply because you had a company
just all
filled
women.
With women.
Yeah.
And that was the automatic sort of, what an interesting link. What was your answer?
I mean, my answer to everything is like, you know, I'm relatively kind of like, you know, I always try to be kind and be like, you know, and just explain it how it is. And then when you actually have a rational conversation with people, I think generally they get it.
No.
But yeah, it is those things that now is kind of, you know, some people still do. I think if I had I mean, obviously, you know, now, I mean, you know, if I had a whole company full of men, I probably don't think I would probably face some of the same questions that I do as if, you know, now. I mean, you know, yes, it is an extreme approach I've taken, and ideal world, yes, it should, you know, be equality, and I know I believe in that, but, you know, the whole kind of equity and like treating people, you know, based on their needs and everything is like, you know, and I really wanted to show in an extreme kind of case study that when women's needs are met in the workplace, and, you know, it's understood that we have different women's health needs, we have, you know, we are, you know, the parent, you know, we're the ones that are, you know, there's certain things that aren't the same with men, that, you know, that's the way we're actually going to get a true shot at equality.
Which is brilliant. And
it's working, because, you know, if you look at it kind of, you know, we've like been growing 50% year on year, I have the most amazing team of women. Like a lot of my team have been with me 10 years, 8 years, 9 years. I have some of my team who have came in, like, for example, like as a part-time admin, like 10 years ago, wanted to focus on her children, then loved it so much,
didn't want to
completely retrained. I said, do you fancy learning, PR? I've literally trained her up from sort of the basics to now. She's one of my directors. She just is, I look at her and I feel like, that's why I wanted to do this, because at that time in her life, she wanted to go to work and do something for herself. But then it's gone from kind of just a bit of kind of work to tick over and to keep her mind busy while the kids are at school, to now actually, I'm a director. I've kind of got a career and wanting even more. Like recently, I made her go and speak at an event, and that was if you'd have said that like nearly 10 years ago, it should have been like literally. And yeah, I just kind of that I feel really proud when I see that.
That's incredible mentoring. Have you always wanted to look after people?
It's funny because if you said that to me, I would say no. But then when I look back and things, I think, and a lot of people obviously always comment on kind of like the fact that I am very empathetic, and I kind of, to me, it is like, now I kind of joke that I'm just like, they call me work mom. So I'm now like literally that old that I'm just,
But you should see your face when you talk about your team, and when you talk about where they have been and where they're growing and their growth, your face completely changes.
Yeah.
Like it's there. It's so there. Like I'm like, okay, forget about the work mom. It seems like it's in your DNA to help people. It's just, you just do it. Like you don't even realize you're doing it.
And I think that's, for me, it is. Like even times, I've had like some of my team, one of my team was having a panic attack on the bathroom floor and everything. Wow. And then I literally was there sitting on the floor and everything. I think to me, it's these kind of things. I always say that I know that times in my early career where maybe, we've all had horrible bosses or experiences. And I look at how they shaped me in my career. And I always think, and I say this to Polly all the time, my MD, we have to think that everything that we do has the potential to impact their future journey. If we did something terrible, that could force them out of an industry, or so I think you have to really take responsibility for how you shape people's paths.
A lot of people don't have that level of self-awareness.
No, but that's why. But I think that to me is that I do think about that, and there have been situations, I'm not saying I've always got it right. We haven't, but I kind of will always learn and hold my hands up to things, and I think I see it as probably why it keeps me awake sometimes at night, a great responsibility having that many people working for me. Yes, but the basic, you've got their, financial responsibility. You're like in COVID, obviously, when, that was terrible for, most of us, and being responsible for everybody's livelihood in a time like that. But then also, I do think about, mental health and all the other things. And as I treat it very humanly.
Well, speaking of mental health, you had a journey yourself. You've been on one hell of a journey.
I have.
Do you want to share a bit about that?
I think I have a complex journey when it comes to mental health. And I think even in the basic form, running a business, it's tough. And there's been, I think now looking back, I've done a lot of work on myself, and I realised that I probably had high functioning anxiety way back even in my teens.
So many people have and did not realise. It's quite not misdiagnosed, missed.
Totally, because you're flying and many, but then ultimately, and I think about even now it's one of those things you go back and think, okay, those nights that I couldn't go out at university because I didn't feel good enough, or I didn't feel, I was so anxious about that. I think the pattern's there and everything, but it's only when actually, but at the same time, I think no one really wants to even go down that actually there might be something wrong. Yeah. But for me, it was probably in my sort of mid-30s that I was really kind of struggling. I started having really terrible panic attacks. Wow. And there were some days where I was having about 6 at a time.
When you had panic, how severe were they?
I mean, there was a stage where it was literally debilitating. I couldn't even... what I remember once, my husband literally had to come and carry me out of the office and kind of get me home, and it was tough because I think I started to go and see, I'm a real believer in therapy and speaking to people. So I went to Lighthouse Arabia, who I do credit with, obviously later on in my story, sort of really saving me. And obviously I did a lot of talk therapy, and then they were saying, look, probably you should look at some medication.
What's talk therapy?
It's in terms of obviously there's different types of talk therapy. So it could be like CBT or kind of, actually just more like the traditional, sort of like counseling kind of therapy. But they said that maybe because of the panic attacks with that debilitating, that I should look at some medication. At the time I was, medication it's got that stigma attached to it. And so
especially back in the day.
Yeah. I mean, that was still back,
Yeah.
we're looking that time, more like when if you had any mental health or medication on your visa and everything that could cause issues.
Yeah.
So I think, at the it was when it was starting to change, but it was still a bit of a stigma. So it took me a while. And then I ended up, my husband and I, we were going through, we'd wanted a family and we'd been going through, trying for a long time. And then we ended up, having, we had multiple miscarriages. And then it was 4 years ago that our daughter was stillborn. And then I think that was, for me, that was, it was a massive, obviously, I mean, there's nothing that kind of compares to it. And I'd always...
How long was this journey?
I mean,
Like
in total, we've had like about 8 years of like IVF, miscarriages, and then, loss. And, and I think I never realised how resilient I was and am. But at the same time, there comes a time where, your bucket's well and truly full and you go over. Yeah. So I did, I ended up on medication and, on a sort of... I think the key thing for me, I mean, there's so much I can say in this area, but I think for me, I wish I had read the signs and took medication earlier. I think because I think I was already in quite a bad way with the compounded loss and everything. And then obviously, when it went to the other extreme, and then I kind of like just sort of threw over the edge.
How did you cope?
I think I mean...
Because 8 years is a lot.
It is, yeah. And I was
and to be running an incredibly successful business at the same time.
And then the irony is that a lot of my company, we've got a subdivision called Tish Tash Tots. It's all about kids and family focused brands. And so I remember that there was times, for example, like we were launching, like Tamara Eccleston has this, I think Fifi and Friends. It's like this really cute, like gorgeous kids brand. And like she was coming over and we did her launch here. And I was literally, I was having a miscarriage like at the event, kind of a media event and everything, just like sort of trying to like face on all these influencers and media bought their kids and like just trying to smile. And I think sometimes I kind of think things act in mysterious ways, but there I am. And so many people have said to me like with your background history, how come you ended up owning a company that's actually dedicated to mothers and kids? And I do believe everything gets you to where you need to be, but it was like it was brutal having to do so many different events and things, like surrounded by babies, and sometimes people don't have a filter and they're always like kind of you next, or asking you if you're pregnant, or it's a
lot.
It is. And even now it's kind of I still get asked some very kind of like pointed questions, or everyone still wants to talk to me about would you like to adopt, or would you maybe you could do this, and like I've never thought about these things before. And
well, you didn't think you had to, you would have to.
No.
That just before we started this recording, we were talking about how, and you made a really good point, you don't always have the time, as much time as you think you do.
No.
No.
And I think, I mean, for me, I've ended up in this situation where, of course, I haven't got the life that I thought I would have. And yes, me and my husband, we desperately wanted a family. And yes, maybe I've ended up with like 58 women that kind of, do call me work mom, and I get a lot of love, and I do get a lot of kind of, from that. But now I kind of see it that, I want to be able to share what I wish I had known. And if I was talking to my 26-year-old self or 27-year-old self, who always thinks you've got time, you've got and there always seems a million reasons not to do things. So I always say now, like, I think if you're in the right relationship, I don't always think you've got time, because there's never going to be enough money, there's never going to be enough time, or you maybe want to do some more things career wise. But there is, so I am talking very openly, not only about sort of mental health generally. I believe we have to talk about these things, because I think if you scratch the surface, most of us are struggling with something, and so, but a lot of the time, so I've ended up going on this mini mission just to talk about the things that we kind of, we either don't want to talk about, we shouldn't be talking about. So be it mental health, be it infertility, child loss. I mean, all the things, the kind of shittiest things that no one wants to talk about, but they are like, if you think about it, like 1 in 4 people will, lose a child, be it from at any stage of pregnancy, from miscarriage to kind of, and it's huge, and yet people don't want to talk about it, and people avoid it. And I mean, I find this, personally, it's like even, be it talking about IVF, or I've written a lot of articles about like how do you juggle IVF when you're working, because the reality is I know that I was lucky that I own the company, and every day I had to go to the hospital for scans or appointments. Like if you work for a non-understanding boss,
also the injections, what it does to you.
Totally. But like I always think now, like I can't imagine if you're like working for a company where you've got, say, I don't know, any boss that's not understanding, you've either got to try and hide or kind of find a way around it. And that's why so many women end up leaving the workplace over that, or taking time out because they can't do it. So I just think, we have to talk about these things. The reality is the fertility rates are dropping, now, and it's going to, increasingly. I mean, you ask most of your friends, like how, if you sort of don't have to scratch around that deeply, and so many people are having trouble conceiving. So my current thing is I love talking about egg freezing. I think there's so many options, and I'm organising the first egg freezing ladies night in September, because I think we have to, like, it doesn't need to be boring, it doesn't need to be, but actually there is an educational piece, but why not let's all go out and have a good time and learn about our options while we're there.
Can it be done here though for a single woman now?
You can freeze your eggs. Your eggs can't be fertilised now, but you can go and do egg freezing. And
because a couple of years ago it still wasn't possible.
The law changed about, I believe it's about a year, 18 months ago.
Oh wow.
And I do think as well, we'll get to, you look at how quickly the laws are changing here and everything, but a lot of, a lot of my friends have done it here now. And, obviously you've got to bear in mind as well, there's so much to say here, but things like, where you're going to be in the future, for example, because there are certain countries you can't, for example, even send frozen eggs back to. So the UK is actually okay, but you got to think about these things as well.
You also can you take it out of the UAE? You can.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is paperwork and a process, but you can. But it just depends where you're going to and what kind of like processes they've got. So no, I think now it's all very possible. But ultimately, the reality is over 30, you've got to try and do it before you're 30 to really get quality eggs, because that's when obviously they start going down. Yeah. And it's like, these days there's so many really good...
It's crazy because you never... I remember when I was younger, you didn't think about that.
No.
You just didn't. I was like, you
just try not to get pregnant. And then...
it was the opposite, right? Try not to get pregnant. And then the other thing was like, it was, for as long as you are menstruating, you're fine. Until you hit menopause, you're fine. But that's not true.
No.
That's not how it works, and you're right. At 29, 30, there is a drastic difference, and if you don't, but then at the same time, we're now living in a world where the women sort of do want to have kids later, and there's always, again, there's, I'm sure you're hearing arguments or people that come back and go, yeah, but the only reason people are doing that is because there's IVF. It's completely changed everything, or women banking it and all of that. And it's like, how do you feel when you hear people talk that way? It's choice. It is choice,
but generally I'd say, like, I don't really get that much kind of. No, I think most people kind of are really sort of supportive and get it, and actually, I think. If you kind of speak to most of my sort of, friends or peers that are probably in a similar kind of place, we all feel very strongly the same. I can't say I've actually had any negativity or any,
Brilliant.
But probably just more a lot of questioning, because people don't really understand, and there has been lots of law changes, which is why, we've got to talk about it and actually, in kind of more palatable ways so people can actually understand it.
And you've introduced that into your workplace as part of your policies. You do support it.
We were this year. We decided. I was a little bit kind of fed up of all of the kind of noise around International Women's Day. It's another pink cake. So I thought, I want to actually. So we've been doing a lot of these things anyway. So we decided for International Women's Day we were going to announce our women's health policies. And so we were one of the, if not the first, to implement menstrual leave days, menopause leave, and unlimited infertility and fertility leave. So any of my team, if they want to egg freeze, go through IVF, they can take whatever time they want off without question.
I love it. I absolutely love it. For those people out there who'll turn around and go, yep, that's great, but, work still has to get done. How do you manage that? We'd love to be able to do that but, it's all a work thing, blah, blah, blah. What's your answer to that?
I mean, the statistics speak for themselves. Our performance speaks for itself. If I look at, we obviously have HR systems and everyone logs things. And I mean, 58 women, how many women do you think in the past year have taken off a period leave day?
Barely any?
2. And then they still worked from home. Everything's got done. So I think it is, people just want to know that they have that if they really are having I've got some of my team that have got like endometriosis or really, really painful periods, and they just know that actually if they can't get in their car and drive to work that day, then they can stay at home and the work gets done. I think it's just that reassurance knowing, we have, we've got a couple of kind of our team, are now in like the perimenopause, menopause. And so we're kind of, we're orientating that as well. We've implemented lots of education and training as well around, egg freezing. We had someone come in independently to do education. We got the team a really good discount on egg freezing, which also can be done in installments if anyone wanted to take it up. We've got someone that is doing it this summer. And then likewise, we've been doing the same for menopause awareness as well. And even a lot of our team are even 22, 20, maybe their mums are going through it and everything, and they've all really enjoyed actually, there's lots of misconceptions that you wouldn't know about things. So
what's the biggest misconception you found about menopause?
I just think, I'll be honest, I got diagnosed as perimenopausal earlier this year. And I didn't, and I thought I was losing my mind. And I've come quite close to losing my mind a few times. And I don't even think I really understood how horrendous, perimenopause was. And I can totally understand how it forces women out of the workplace, because once again, I'm lucky that I own my business, but I'm sitting there kind of in the middle of a conversation, and I completely forget everything. I can't, I am the biggest juggler and multitasker that I know. Even my MD says you have the capacity of 4 people. Yeah. But this year I've actually really struggled, and maybe she said maybe I've gone down to 2 people now, and so that's making me feel a bit uncomfortable. But, to me, that's really alien. And so I'm thinking, I can imagine if you're in another company and maybe say, I don't know, maybe you've got colleagues or bosses that maybe aren't so understanding, and you're sitting there forgetting what you're doing, all over all of a sudden why women might lose their confidence and actually think, I can't do this job anymore. I think it's one of the things that until you actually go through it, you don't really realise. And now, I kind of then start to feel really bad about how I've treated my mum, when you're sort of looking back and thinking, oh yeah, no, she was probably obviously there wasn't really perimenopause back then,
You were literally menopause.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But now I feel bad that I probably was quite mean to her when she was struggling.
So I'm trying to think back. I think my mom's the Iron Maiden. They don't, she was incredible. I do remember she was going through something. I do remember her mentioning things to me, and it was at the time, it was like natural hormone therapy. I remember her putting stuff, but she, if anything, I think she just suffered in silence.
Yeah, I think it was I'm trying to think what that supplement is. Everyone, evening primrose. Everyone was taking that. That was the answer.
In bucket loads, But
it is very.
It was suffered in silence back then. So it's just, and I'm seeing a lot more women getting on, having a platform and speaking about perimenopause and menopause and the workplace.
Yeah, it's having a moment, which I'm all for her. I think it is. End of the day, we're an aging population, and we are 50% of the population, so it's going to happen to us, and I think we have to, because once again, I think as long as we understand it and we can sort of put kind of understand that men and women aren't dealing with the same things, then hopefully we can prevent a huge pool of talent of kind of 40, 50 something women leaving the workplace.
Because it's not necessary. But it's also, like you said, it's a great deal of talent. It would be a right shame for it to, for them to leave simply because they're not being understood.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about it.
Exactly. So that's just another one, the things we have to talk about.
Brilliant. So what's next?
I kind of feel, as I said, I've gone down this path where I didn't think I would never, whilst obviously, I wish I'd never lost a child, and that's something that, I still, deal with every day. But I do feel that everything has happened to get me to where I need to be. I have found a voice which seems to resonate, and I've got quite a few plans with that. At the moment, I've kind of been leading we're on our 3rd Child Loss Awareness Day in the Middle East, and we've pulled together all the different communities for that, and all of us feel very committed that we want to establish that as something beyond us. Obviously, it's an expat world, you never know who's going to be here, so we're going through the process of setting that up as a not-for-profit at the moment. So that's something that we all feel really passionately about, that everyone should have access to care at any stage of baby or child loss. That really, it is one of those things. It's a
That's
really
quite dear to your heart.
Yeah, it's a really emotional and triggering day. I have this dream that, if anyone's out there can help me with, that every year we've been trying to light the Burj Khalifa up. The Burj Khalifa lights up for lots of days, which is amazing. Given that child and baby loss affects 1 in 4, I think it would be a really beautiful thing to do. Other landmarks around the world have lit up. Burj Khalifa's never lit up. Every year I try, it's not happened, but I'm not done yet. It's going to happen. And I have this view that it'll be in the kind of colours with like all names of like children that have that's what I really want to make happen. So I've got until October to get
this October.
Yes, that's my plan, is to have the not-for-profit set up and make that happen for this October. I know I've met some of the best people through that as well. I mean, I was very clear when I lost my daughter, I thought, and everyone says like there's this child loss support group, and I kind of was I didn't want to become one of those people that just hangs around with people that have lost children. I kind of just wanted to see my friends and talk about handbags. But I have ended up surrounded. I've got some amazing women, who have all gone through the same things, but we're all very focused on the same things. So I think all of us, that's something that I feel really, really strongly about, that I want to make a difference. Even if we help one person, to me that's worthwhile. That in terms of obviously the women's health space, things like obviously I'm working on, the first egg freezing ladies night, we're working on the first menopause ladies night. So I really just want to, bring all the things that, we should be talking to in a really, really palatable, fun and kind of like things people want to come to.
You're taking the loneliness away.
Yeah.
Which is the hardest part. Like we've had a few episodes where we had some incredible women come on the show and they talked about their journey of loss, or even what do you call it, post, oh my god, I'm going completely blank, post
PTSD?
No, after childbirth.
Postnatal depression.
That's it. I was trying to remember what one of our guests actually renamed it. It was fantastic, and that's why I sort of frazzled my brain. And it just was so heart-wrenching listening to their story about them sitting there and suffering in silence and being too scared to speak, or feeling, they can't speak, or, I can't speak because how can I as a mother be feeling these feelings? And then, and it was 2 separate interviews, and I'm like, wow, and you're both saying exactly the same thing. And if women just spoke or felt that they could speak to someone, or they could speak to each other, or they did speak up, we could save so much of that pain.
Exactly. And I think, why I choose to speak out on my social, even on my LinkedIn, is because, if one person doesn't feel alone, then it's worth it.
Well, Tash, I'll be doing whatever I can to help you light up the Burj Khalifa. I'm very inspired.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in.
No, thank you for having me. It's been, a pleasure.
Beautiful, beautiful episode. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Rooted Within with Lily and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.